Bible truth, line by line, in context, 5-minute lessons. Let's go. Welcome to Bible Bites. What's going on, guys? All right, check it out. I was trying to wait until there was less going on in the neighborhood, but there's like dogs barking and planes flying overhead and all kinds of stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and record this. I'll try and edit it out as best I can, but stick with me. This episode is really, really, really special for me because this whole channel is about obedience, finding obedience, not through the letter of the law, but through the Spirit of God, okay? The Holy Spirit. So we can actually walk this thing out. That's what I wanted because I'm tired of the shame I feel. Even though my sins are covered, man, I don't like sinning and I want to get away from it, all right? This was the biggest step that I have ever encountered as far as my walk goes, the biggest truth, and I'm ready to share it with you, but I wanted to walk you up to this point so you just didn't see that I was pulling it out of my you know what, all right? So let's get started. We left off with Romans 6:13, and we saw that we should yield to God as one risen from the dead. But I want you to remember before we go forward, from Romans 1 to now, we have been talking about a circumcision, a separation from what our bodies lead us to do in terms of unrighteousness to a heart and mind just total shift, right? It's about ungodliness to godliness. So yielding to God in this sense, this is about belief. You're talking about believing what God has told you through his gospel, which is that if you're dead, you are now risen to a new life leading to toward him, toward God. And you must believe this in order to override the unrighteousness of your ungodly body. Got it? Let's keep going. Let me turn my page. All right, here we go. Romans 6:14. Now, Paul states, sin has no dominion over us because of grace. Now, notice Paul starts the verse with for, and that's an indication there's a condition that's got to be met, or basically, sin shall not have dominion if a condition is met. And that condition was presented back in Romans 6, 7 through 11, right? We're dead with Christ, okay? And he that is dead is freed from sin. We got to believe this. We got to know that Christ was raised, so death has no more dominion over him. And because we're put into his death and his likeness of resurrection, we're now raised to a new life with Christ. We must believe this, all right? That's the condition. But the reason if this condition works is because we're no longer under the law, but under grace. And grace, we know, is a free, undeserved gift from God, right? That's what gave us our salvation through Christ because we believe in his name. Let's go. Context is beautiful. Now, Romans 6:15, Paul gives us a question. Can we or should we sin because we're under grace and not the law? And of course, a man says, no way, right? But in 6:16, we get the explanation for why. But I want you to notice Paul's wordplay, like always. My man is a genius. Whomever we yield ourselves to obey, they become our master. I paraphrased it, right? But notice there are two masters presented here. And there's two outcomes for those two masters, right? Master number one is sin, and the result is death. But master number two is obedience, and the result is righteousness. Notice the wording is subtle, but so important because to whom ye yield yourselves servants to obey, his servants ye are to whom ye obey. We're talking about persons being obeyed. Look at Romans 6:16 again. Whether of sin or of obedience. Okay, we talked about sin having some form of sentience that we shouldn't dismiss and really might need to think about in terms of having a real personal enemy constantly with you going against the desires of your heart toward God now. But notice, obedience is also a person, and this person provides righteousness. But Romans 3:21 through 22 showed us God's righteousness is Jesus Christ. Stay with me here. God's righteousness is Christ, and it comes to us through Christ. And Romans 6:16 says, if we obey obedience, it leads to righteousness. But we proved in other videos that you can't just pass around righteousness, because righteousness is a person. And to obey, right, is not talking about the law. It's about obeying the truth. Romans 2:8, meaning to obey God and obey that truth, we found was to believe in the gospel of God and Christ, meaning obedience is a person, and that person is Jesus. And we know the way to Jesus is the same way you first got to Jesus, through the gospel. And that's what I wanted to get to at this point. Guys, if you want to be obedient to God, you gotta have obedience with you, because obedience is not a moral characteristic, it is a person. And you cannot earn a person. You cannot have it by works, right? You cannot earn a person. And especially, you can't earn a person who is your master, because the only person that can give you righteousness is Jesus Christ. And the only way you can get that righteousness through Christ is to be obedient, which is to have obedience with you. And the way you get that is the way you got saved, by going to the gospel and believing what God says is true. You want to be obedient? Hang out with Jesus, and you won't have time to be with disobedience. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. I love you guys. This is Bible Bites. I'm out. Talk to you next time. Later.